We want to talk about this IPO. We're waiting for SpaceX to file this prospectus, which could happen any day now. Before we get there, though, I want to get your perspective on what we saw over the course of the last week. This has been a market that has been, I don't want to say complacent as this war has unfolded, but it does seem like there were doubts sown among investors here at the end of the week, and it was a nasty Friday, to say the least.
No, it was a nasty Friday. And David, you know this as well as anyone. If you are an investor, one thing you hate is uncertainty. And the other thing is being long stocks or risk assets over a weekend where pretty much it's anyone's guess what the next 36 hours will look like. And so when you really look at the price action that we saw on Friday in particular, it did seem like people either were adding up on bearish hedges or really dumping anything that was particularly risky, just given we don't know what the weekend will bring. And when you lay that across the entire month that was March, we've had a lot of volatility. To your point, you talk to bullish investors, well, hey, we're only down 5, 6, 7%, depending on the index that you look at. That's not that bad, all things considered. And every potential headline that a resolution is on the horizon typically brings at least a knee-jerk reaction. But when I talk to folks on Wall Street, there still is this resounding hope that the problems will be addressed and the war will be ended sooner than later, and then business can get back to usual. There aren't many people thinking about what happens if this drags on for another 4 or 5 weeks.
So with all that in the backdrop, why do this now? Why does SpaceX want to do this now? And is this a fait accompli? Are they definitely doing it soon, or might they wait given all this volatility?
So the thing with IPOs are they can be long, drawn-out processes. With SpaceX, every detail is closely watched. So what we're waiting for is a confidential filing, which would formally kick off the potential IPO path. The big thing to keep in mind is that SpaceX has kind of been vocal, at least through various media reports, that they want to go public in June. And if you think back, 2.5 months ago, the market backdrop was quite different. So when you look at the time frame for SpaceX to go public, we could be in a very different market by the time it actually gets kind of on the launch pad and potentially goes public versus where we are now, where submitting this document to the SEC just makes it easier to market the deal more formally to investors, as opposed to setting any type of shot clock, if you will.
Wait, I have logistics questions for you guys who've covered IPOs before, which I have not on this level. Do you have to constantly, is it like a DOJ filing? Do you have to constantly refresh the page waiting for that to pop up? Or do you know that they've posted it and you can go get it?
So with the Jobs Act, they opened up confidential filing. So technically they could submit and no one knows. So this could be something that they announce via press release. This could be something that us and competitors find from our sourcing and report out. Or we were joking with a few bankers. In theory, we are understanding this is not the case. In theory, they could have submitted this a month ago and were able to keep it tight-lipped and no one actually knows. This is the one aspect of that filing. And the big thing is you file the submission, you submit the filing confidentially, then you wait a month to go back and forth with the SEC from there. And that's kind of why this March timeframe was so critical for Elon to potentially meet his goal of going public by his birthday, which is the end of June.
Wow.
I got to give you props for using the IPO on the launch pad pun there, which I'm sure was deliberate, Bailey. I want to ask you about what this company is kind of picking up off of that. I think there are a lot of people who think of SpaceX as a company that makes and shoots off rockets into space. It has grown to such more than that over the last many years. This is a company that now owns xAI, which is Elon Musk's AI company, which is hemorrhaging money as it tries to build up and build new data centers. Starlink, of course, has been bringing money in. It owns that too. And then what was formerly known as Twitter, X, is now part of xAI, so part of this whole conglomerate as well. How does that complicate the way that investors are looking at this company as an investment? The fact that it really is this very multifaceted conglomerate.
To your point, when you think back to February before the merger of parent company xAI, which owns X, and SpaceX, SpaceX was arguably one of the cleanest stories in the private market. It was essentially a space monopoly that owns launch, getting rockets and satellites into space. And to your point, owning Starlink, which is the dominant player in potentially getting or actually actively getting direct to consumer, direct to cell phone and other devices internet connection. Now with this merger, when I talk to investors, the pitch still is heavily predicated on the kind of old school SpaceX company, with xAI being a part of that. The one thing to keep in mind is if you talk to many people, and if you polled, I would say, the smartest people on Wall Street and asked, well, what is Tesla? Is it a car company? Is it a robot company? Is it something that's going to be partnering with SpaceX for Terrafab? It's just the entire Elon ecosystem, that Elon premium, that these companies are very complex, and there are a lot of areas to look at that can justify higher valuations.
I'm glad you bring up Tesla, and I think about the history of that company and how Elon Musk really valued the true believers among those investors who stood with him even as Tesla wasn't able to make as many cars as it said it would, as deadlines got pushed. And Elon Musk has a real affection for the retail investor. I'm curious how SpaceX is going to benefit or serve those investors going forward. Do we have any sense of sort of how they will be able to take advantage of this IPO when in fact it happens?
So we put out the reporting that they could allocate about 30 to 35% of the IPO for retail investors. One thing to keep in mind, if the company does raise its targeted $75 billion, it's about $22.5 billion for retail, which would be the third largest IPO in the history of IPOs. So that's an insane amount of money to just comprehend that could be allocated to retail. And to your point, the boardroom and these bankers are discussing the best way to allocate shares to the true believers, people who have held Tesla for a long time. Maybe people who own Tesla cars will be able to get better access at the IPO. At the end of the day, when we talk to bankers, finding $75 billion of demand, there's enough capital out there, but being able to execute the IPO in a way that delivers for both the company and investors is going to be closely watched.
Bailey, we've got about 30 seconds left, but how much of this is trying to get ahead of Anthropic, and what does this mean for OpenAI, and Anthropic?
Yeah, it's a bit of a race, and SpaceX clearly has set the best timeline or the quickest timeline to circle that June target. We reported that Anthropic could go as soon as October, and OpenAI, from our understanding, is kind of neck and neck potentially with trying to line up those prospects to go public. So when we think about 2026 as a whole, we could see all three of these companies, or if the volatility continues, we could see one or two drag on into 2027.
All right.